In this video, I am going to talk about a part of the e-bike market which I have never covered before, but people have been asking about it, so I decided to look into it. This is the market for friction drives, and I'm not that crazy about this part of e-biking, partly because it is underpowered and it has certain disadvantages that I am going to discuss. It also has a few significant advantages over all other technologies. Let me look at a few of them that are popular. The first one I'm going to look at is the Kamingo. This is a brand new project. It is on Kickstarter. If you look at the price, you can now get one for $360. Once it goes on retail, the price is going to go up, according to the company, to $600. So if you get it now, you can certainly get it for very cheap. Now you can see here that this is basically, as I described in my book, it has all the components, the motor, the controller, the computer, but everything is much more compact. You have the motor, you have the controller right in there. This is a battery disguised as a water bottle. This is the battery. And this is the motor, and I suspect the controller is in there. It's just a fairly primitive motherboard. There's practically no adjustability with these drives. And this is what it looks like. And there is a tiny computer that you can slip into the handlebar. And here is somebody riding it. There is also an app. In fact, most of these systems have a phone app that works with Bluetooth. I'm not too crazy about Bluetooth. Now, the problem I have with most of these kits is you attach them by friction directly onto the tire, which means you cannot have a mud guard or a fender. It means if there is any dirt on the tire, you're going to be just sprinkling the dirt all over the place, and the drive can even cut out, because if it's very muddy or slippery, then it's just not going to do any friction at all. Here's a close-up. On the positive, it is an extremely compact system. It is a system that you can take with yourself. If you're parking the bike outside and you're worried about somebody stealing your e-bike kit, you can quickly detach both the motor as well as the battery and take them inside with you. Of course, people can still steal or vandalize your bicycle, but at least they cannot get to the e-kit, which is not something I can say about most of the other kits out there. Interestingly enough, this is one part of the market where everything is do-it-yourself. That means you have to install the kit. There is no such thing as a friction drive e-bike that you can just buy off the shelf. You get a very cute, nice little computer, very compact. I wish I had something like that on my green kit. But on the other hand, I would not want to give up the humongous power of my computer, which let you see everything, even the temperature of the motor, and brake regeneration, which of course is not offered by most of these. But they are very compact. In many ways, they are easy to install. I mean, who cannot screw an attachment onto a triangle or a seat post? It's very easily installed kit. You don't need to really understand much of anything. 10-second installation, they claim. 20 miles per hour top speed. Now the top speed is all limited. Just as I mentioned in videos and in my book before, these companies that sell you kits for the most part are afraid of lawsuits, and they give you speed limits. Unfortunately, most of these kits, being as tiny and as underpowered as they are going to be limited to only 15 an hour. This one in particular is more like 20, which I do like. The range, 55 miles of range on a single charge, is very, very good, but you are not going to get that much of a support. The 750 is a lie. That's the peak output, which is basically irrelevant. What you want to look at is the continuous output, which is 250, and that's about as much as you're going to get out of these tiny motors. This motor in here is basically an RC motor. If you have ever looked at some of those remote control electric planes and little race cars, toy cars on Amazon and elsewhere, this is it. It's the same thing adopted for a bicycle. Notice that there's also a board there, so the controller is also there. That means controllers can easily overheat, so you really cannot put that much power in it. So the voltage is going to be maximum 36 volt. Then I'm going to give you a 48 or 52 volt kit with something as tiny as this. And it's probably not even possible to apply that much power via friction. So the positive part is the ease of handling, installing it, the ease of disassembling it, that you have basically quick release for everything. You can remove the whole kit in less than a minute and leave the bike outside, and the kit is going to be with you, so nobody can steal it or vandalize it, which of course can be a problem. There are now thieves specializing on stealing batteries. If you consider that a new battery can cost hundreds of dollars, sometimes $1,000, it's definitely a good steal if you are a criminal. They also have this option that you flip a switch and the friction drive part distances itself from the wheel, so you don't necessarily have to have the drive attached. They do not have much of any control over how much power you apply though. You can remove the friction, you can remove the drive, but they do not have the sophisticated power and speed control systems that are built into the green kit I use. I do appreciate the compactness of it, but there is a price for everything. This is a cheap kit. For $360, you cannot hope that somebody's going to sell you 750 watt of power at the wheel with no speed limit and a huge battery, 15 or 20 ampere hours. These are teeny tiny compact kits. They do not cost much because they are not powerful or heavy, but that's precisely the advantage. They are also very cheap. So this is also a good way to get into the game if you are interested in possibly electrifying your ride, but you don't know how to go about it. Who cannot afford $360? If you cannot afford this much, you probably should not be thinking about an e-bike. Then here is another kit that's been making the rounds on Facebook, YouTube, and other social media, the Livall or Livall, I don't know how to pronounce it. This is another one of those kits, except that in this case, the battery and the whole everything is housed in a single piece, which is very interesting. This is where the battery goes in. This is where you have your little RC motor. You have a built-in primitive controller. And what you have on the handlebar is just this tiny thing, but there is also a smartphone app. The price of this kit is almost the same as the other one, $400. And this is already on retail. So the previous kit was going to go on the market retailing at $600. I assume this price might go up eventually as well if the consumers like it. So because everything is a single piece, you don't need to worry about installing a battery and removing it. You can very easily install this on everything, including your Brompton, Birdie, Moulton, because every bike, even a folding bike, is going to have a seat post. And this one locks onto the seat post, and you can vary the angle. So there is some flexibility depending upon the angle of your post. And even if you have small wheels, it's easily going to fit. Once again, they claim a lot of peak power, but it's really just 250 as a real continuous power. Do not expect more than that. This attachment is permanently on, but the unit itself is a quick release. Nobody is going to steal that cheap attachment. If they wanted to steal it, they would go for this one, and it's very easy to quickly remove and take it in the office with you. Obviously, your bike is still exposed to danger if you decide to lock it up and leave it on the street, but at least they cannot get to your electric package. There have been people who asked me about rental bikes and using a kit that you can just attach to a rental bike. The problem is most rental bikes do not have an exposed tire. You have fenders, and that means these kits are not useful for that. So that means you cannot really use them in any kind of hazardous weather or even on terrain that is muddy or very dirty, because the tire is going to pick that up. And this little RC motor is going to sprinkle that all over the place. There is a smartphone app, and that is true of all of them. So you can get more information without having to install a computer on your handlebar. which has its positives but also its negatives because, well, I don't necessarily want to pull a smartphone out of my pocket while riding to check on some parameters. Obviously, you can attach your smartphone to the handlebar, but that is going to be the same problem that you have with the computer. If you don't want people to steal or vandalize your electronics, you're going to have to remove them when you park the bike. The battery is very compact, but also it is very underpowered. If you expect people to be able to remove all of this and carry it around, you obviously cannot have a 10-pound battery. So these batteries are 2 or 3 pounds. They are very light. The whole package is probably not more than 4 pounds. Otherwise, this whole detachment philosophy would just not work. And this is your tiny handlebar controller. I cannot even call it a computer because it's not a computer. There are some adjustments even to the speed, but the speed is never going to be that much anyway. And this is the app. You probably would want to attach your smartphone to the handlebar with this. Not a bad looking kit. It's not bulky. It can be colored to match your frame if you so wish. I do believe that the previous frame, this one was more elegant and more compact, but this one has a separate battery, which looks understated on the black frame, but if you have a silver frame, it's not going to look anywhere nearly as understated. Of course, you can always color all of these to match your frame, and that's probably what I would do. These are very basic kits. You only pay a few $100s. I think they are great if you just want to find out what it's like to add electric support to the bike you already have. There are much more unsightly kits as well. Believe it or not, this clip-on kit has been quite popular, but notice that it attaches on the 2 sides, and you can even use it on bicycles that have a mudguard. So while being horrendously ugly, it offers advantages you could not get from those tiny motors because it's really touching the wheel from the 2 sides. And of course, they are trying to market it as something that you can easily clip off. That's why it's called the clip on, clip off. It's very easy to use it. Now, this is something you might even be able to use on a rental bike. Consider how easily it attaches onto different forks. So if there are a few millimeters of difference between forks, apparently it's able to handle that. It snaps on. You can see that it snaps on whatever you have. So as ugly as it is, it actually does work, and it is an effective way of powering your bike. It seems that there is the same kind of a roller that touches the tire here, but they moved it further ahead so that you can have your mudguard. Boy, is this ugly. I would not want to be seen with this, but it works. If you don't mind your biking like this, then go ahead. Here's another completely different system. This is a British system. It cost a fortune. We are looking at over $2,000. It is friction drive in a way, but not like the others. This motor that is running here is powering a special disc that you have to integrate into the wheel. Supposedly, this is not so difficult to install. I'm not sure if that's true. So you have to have some space there. And I wonder how that would install on a standard with wheel hub. So here is the installation. You have to install this disc, and you have an attachment here, and you have a quick release for the drive unit. Now, once you have installed everything, you can quickly release the drive unit, take it in the office with you, which is great. But initial installation does not look all that simple, and this is a very expensive kit. I don't think it's any more powerful than the others. I do like the pedal sensor because it's easy to hack it. There's a little sensor here that senses how far or how often you turn the pedal. Some people have tricked these sensors by relocating them to some other place where it doesn't move as fast. So the speed restriction is not going to work. Although that means that the speedometer and the odometer and anything else you have in the computer is also not going to work. This is the way it looks. It's not a bad looking kit. It's kind of relatively out of sight, and it's fairly lightweight. It's quick release, but this is the problem. This is the disc that you have to install. You can see the cassette on the right side, but on the left side, is this something that requires a special wheel hub? It's not impossible that you have to get a new wheel hub to install this. Otherwise, how is this going to fit? And this is the sensor, which is so easily removed. There's an easy strap on it. I love this part. The battery is not very powerful. It's like half the power of my battery. The torque is actually pretty good. The weight, this is heavy. This is a 10-pound kit, and you are only getting 250 watts of power. They are claiming that in eco mode you could do 30-35 miles per charge, but eco mode is probably very minimal of an assist. And if you crank up the speed, it's going to come down to 20 miles per charge. The range is really not that great. And even with that short range, you have plenty of weight to worry about. Also, once you detach the main element, that's going to be most of the 10 pounds that you have installed. So it must be really heavy to walk around with, even if you can uninstall in a few seconds. And here it is in British pounds. This is more than $2,000. This is a bit of a video that shows you how to install it and uninstall it. I'm putting a link below for all of this stuff so you can do your own research. I'm actually not a fan of this one. It's an interesting idea because it's a friction that is resistant to rain. It does not spread any dirt. But on the other hand, for this much money and for this much weight, I would much rather go with other options. And here it is in use. It's putting all of the weight in the rear, where most of your weight already is. So the rear of your bike is going to be really heavy and out of balance. This is definitely not something that a road bike rider would want. And then here is the most unique German design. This is a company that's been in business for over a decade, and yet they are selling these kits on eBay. They use PayPal for payments. The website is really underwhelming, but the quality is really good. So in order to overcome all the problems with the dirt, they are putting the friction not onto the tire, but onto the rim itself, just like a dynamo. And that, by the way, opens up the possibility of brake regeneration as well, because you could use a dynamo effect on downhills to generate electricity and send it back to the battery. The battery is small and compact. The controller is very small and compact. Because you don't want to push the wheel from right to left or the other way around, there are actually two dynamo motors on the two sides pressing against one another. They are attached to the rear triangle via a specialized attachment that just screws on. It just grabs onto whatever metal bar you have. The price, for the quality you are getting, the price is not too bad. About the price of a green kit, $1,300 or so. They claim you could do 40 miles on a charge with that. That sounds really good. I don't know if there is a speed restriction. There might be one. And I'm sure the power with those tiny motors cannot be more than about 250 watts. Amazingly enough, they have a Brompton version of this. There's the Brompton attachment, but you have to get a rear rack for your Brompton to use that because it is attaching to the rear rack. You probably cannot attach it here because it's too busy. There's not enough space. But in the back, there is space. Also, you cannot use a Brompton with no rack, just trying to attach it to the thin little aluminum post that the fender has. That's not strong enough for an application like this. But it's actually a very stealth kit. You can't even see that the bike is electrified. The mounting of the battery is really not bad. It has a fairly low center of gravity and not far from the motor itself, so there aren't that many wires to worry about when you fold. Of course, the weight is shifted toward the back, which I'm not too crazy about. But the fact that you can get this kit for the Brompton Specialized, I think is remarkable. Of course, you have to get a rack for the rear, which is probably going to be another close to $200. So you're going to end up spending quite a bit of money on this, but this is very stealth. There's no police officer that's going to pull you over with this thing. Is this something you can just suddenly snap off and detach and carry inside? The battery you can, the motors you cannot. This is not a quick release installation. You are installing these motors for real. At first you have to very tightly screw everything onto the base onto the rear rack, and then the motor is installed into that, but it's not a quick release. It's very well designed and engineered. It's really precise, and you have two motors, not one. You cannot use just one because that would be applying tremendous power from just one side of the wheel. It's a very neat installation, one of the neatest for the Brompton that I have ever seen. Certainly not ugly, and certainly something the Brompton company itself should have taken up. They should have adopted it. They should have permitted their shops, the Brompton Junction and the dealerships, to install it for people. I bet a lot of people would love to install these kits on existing bikes. Why not? There is a controller here. I can see that. So there are some wires going around, just like with most of the Brompton installations, because Brompton has external wiring. Very stylish, very subtle. You don't really have much of any computer. I don't think there's a smartphone app for this. I think this is it, this little button. You turn it on and off. It seems like that simple, although I'm not for sure. Like with some of the German companies, the marketing and sales are awful. The website is awful. Video coverage for this kit, to use it, to install it, is next to nothing. So you can see the two tiny RC motors pressing against each other. They are doing it under the fender. So the fender is not a problem. And I think that's going to be a plus for a lot of people. Is this a better system to have than a center drive or a hub motor drive? It's certainly lighter and more stealth. If it does have brake regeneration, which I have not been able to verify, then that would be really cool, because that's the one thing I really would like to have. But still, it's not gonna have the electronic braking power of a hub motor. Here is one video that I found about installing it and running it. This is a full-sized bike and probably a full-sized wheel as well, 26-inch wheel. And you see how it's screwed in. There is a little bit of a rubber or plastic cover to protect your triangle, protect the paint job if you have one. But this is a very tight fit, so if you install it, you really have to be careful. And I might add more padding here because I don't want my nickel-plated frame to suffer any damage. And here it is. Now in this case, they just installed one of the motors. This is only a test. You should not be installing just one motor. I really don't know if it does have brake regeneration or not, but it's certainly very attractive and stylish. They are tightening something. Very elegant and stylish little kit. So if somebody bought it, they would probably buy it for that, to have something subtle and maybe to be able to remove the battery, although you could do this with any bike. Even with my green bike, I can remove the battery if I want to. So it's really not a problem. Okay, this is my coverage of friction drive electric bike kits. Let me know what you think below in the comments. I am happy to announce an update to my shopping page. I have removed a lot of this stuff because all of the Amazon links that I have are now over on my Amazon front page. I am providing a link below. This is my book. This is all of the other stuff I recommend. And I have some t-shirts and hoodies as well. These are my own designs, and you can select them right down here. A separate link for the t-shirts, separate link for the hoodies. You can even get to Brompton and Zooter and some of the other things that you can buy from Amazon. And as well as a lot of accessories that I recommend, the grips I recommend, the brakes, the helmets, the tires, the winter stuff, the saddle, the tools, everything I believe in that Amazon has. Now Amazon doesn't have everything, so some of the stuff I have left in my original shopping page that's still at the same URL. You can check out these companies. I am not actually making any money on these links, but I think it's important for you to have access to these technologies. And these are the bikes I recommend. If you ever wonder what the full list of my recommendations are, this is the full list. Check it out. And of course, this is my book and a link to the Amazon storefront. This is it for now, and
I'll be back.